back to Alchemical Astrology. If you're new here, I'm Melusine, your sky map analyst, here to interpret celestial mechanics for you through a traditional Western tropical lens, utilizing porphyry houses. I monitor the planetary archetypal energies from a heliacal perspective. This is a fancy way of saying where the planets are in relation to the sun, and thereby determine what shifting faces they present to our world that parallel our own. You may be thinking, why is she publishing a March report so late in the month? Two reasons. The first being, I measure the energetics of information release and time it for the most auspicious moment of integration. That time is now, and I'll explain further in this presentation. Secondly, there is so much going on with all the planets traveling in direct motion that those who don't have at least an intermediate understanding of astrological terminology and the implications of the geometry involved will go into analysis paralysis within minutes. Astrology has its own vocabulary, and you need to have that dictionary to hand if any of this is to make any sense for you to apply it to your daily lives. The intricate gear shifts of multiple wheels rotating simultaneously in the celestial canopy can be overwhelming to the layperson. If you remember the Disney movie Sword in the Stone, when Merlin was training young Arthur and Madame Mim steps into the arena, challenging the great magician to a shape-shifting standoff, that pretty much sums up the month of March. Giving you a play-by-play won't be very helpful if you're not a wizard. My aim is to empower, not hinder your capacity to navigate through these monumental transitions. So I'm going to pare down the planetary dynamics into the four most significant components that will have the greatest impact on you as an individual and the collective as a whole. So put on your magic caps and let's jump into the alchemical soup of our archetypal transformation. The pot of gold presents itself right off the top with a magnificent pairing of the two benefics, Jupiter and Venus, who were dancing in Aries right after sunset on March 1st. The two brightest planets in the night sky were just a moon's width apart, marking the cardinal fire sign as a place of interest for the duration of this month and the year to follow. We then had the vernal equinox in the northern hemisphere on March 20th. Which had the sun lighting up the sign of the Ram, and only hours later the new moon entered the same sign. This specific alignment of luminaries last occurred in 2004 and won't happen again until 2053. With a stellium of planets in the first sign of the zodiac offering up this much fuel, it is clearly evident that fortune will smile on those who find the courage to pursue their intentions with conviction and passion. But before that can be accomplished effectively, the sky mid-month is showing us that we need to purge old wounds, Jupiter conjunct Chiron in Aries, and surrender toxic thought patterns imprinted in the subconscious, Mercury conjunct Neptune in Pisces. With Neptune going cazimi on March 15th, that is to say, within 1 degree of the sun, we will all be expected to make a leap of faith in some endeavor, trusting in what can't be seen. Neptune is a key player for this astrological new year, as it is the modern ruler of Pisces, and Saturn made its ingress into Pisces on March 7th, shortly after the full moon presented in the opposite sign of Virgo. Saturn has been driving the celestial bus since December 19th, 2017, when he moved into his own sign of Capricorn and continued to dominate over the last 5 years, as he is also the traditional ruler of Aquarius, which favors top-down structures, hierarchical order, and authoritarian control. But now the tides have turned, and he is swimming in Neptunian waters. You may be hit by bouts of melancholy, and now would be a good time to get a reflexology treatment and lymphatic drainage, as Pisces in medical astrology rules the feet and lymphatic system, and these will need support with Saturn in the mix. Neptune dissolves boundaries and emphasizes flow. Saturn will be treading water with the Lord of Dreams until February of 2026. This is a game changer on the mundane level. The greatest impact collectively will be felt on religious institutions and belief systems. Any effort on the part of government to dismantle organized religion will encounter serious pushback. What we hold to be true will be challenged on all fronts, regardless of our faith, so much so that some will be shaken to the core when information previously undisclosed will begin to see the light of day. We will be required to dig deep in our reserves to find a place of balance, and remaining centered will be fundamental to our well-being as we forge our way to a future as dream walkers, not sleepwalkers. So with the lead landing in the last sign of the zodiac, what is the best way to arrive at the gold? Mercury always shows the way in his role as the world bridger. He dropped below the horizon out of view, very close to Saturn, the Lord of Karma. This month, he starts out in Pisces, and while below the horizon, on March 17th, he reaches apogee, the point furthest away from the Earth, while he has a chat with Neptune, bringing up all the subconscious thought patterns that have been holding us back. This marks the beginning of Mercury's waning hemicycle. In human terms, this archetypal bridge points to purging, releasing, and rebirthing in the waters of the previous era and purifying through fire as Mercury transits into Aries on March 19th, where he is sextiling Pluto, the Lord of Death and Transformation. He is in his Promethean direct face, that is to say, behind the sun, while in dialogue with both Saturn and Neptune. This is the presentation of Mercury associated with a future-oriented mindset driven by social issues and reform. After the superior conjunction on the 17th, he puts on his Epimethean face, or evening star presentation that relies more on analytical, thoughtful deliberation, as opposed to impulsive, intuitive decision-making. Any woundings we have as a collective around identity and social norms will be emphasized when Mercury conjuncts Chiron in Aries on the 26th, and this will be expanded as Mercury joins with Jupiter 2 days later. We will be expected to rationally resolve conflicts from a higher perspective gained by experiences that have arisen in the last 2 years to be healed. A collective shadow work, so to speak. Mid-month, Venus stands in her full power as she ingresses into her domain of Taurus on the 16th and remains there for the duration of the month. But be prepared for potential changes in your love life and finances that may have a fated flavor as she squares Pluto, bumps into the North Node on the 21st, and rendezvous with Uranus on the 30th. All of you who have Gemini rising, myself included, will be utterly relieved to hear that Mars gets dunked into the sign of Cancer on the 25th after punching us in our ascendant sign relentlessly for 7 months. It is growing dimmer as it recedes from the Earth, and it is in its fall in the domain ruled by the Moon. The Moon is moist and cool. Mars is happiest when it's hot and dry. That's a considerable differentiation in energies to be taken into account when planning your next move. Mars points to where the warring potentiality may manifest, and most assuredly this has been a war of words, communication censoring, polarization through propagandizing, and mind manipulation on all levels, particularly by way of creating a dependence on weaponized technology for information gathering. With both malefics, Mars and Saturn, in water signs, this diffusion of malignant potency should be utilized to our advantage, especially in the latter half of March, when we have a stellium in Aries that can catalyze quick results while the malefics are both treading water. Be extra delicate with your stomach and keep hydrated and alkaline, as acid reflux could penetrate your digestive tract with Mars in this sign. And now we come to the whopper of transits all the astrologers are emphasizing in their monthly reports: Pluto's ingress into Aquarius. In 1 month, we have 6 planets changing signs while in direct motion. That's enough to make anyone's head spin. But the Lord of the Underworld, hovering between the 2 Saturn-ruled signs, is a generational transition that cannot be ignored. Pluto landed in Capricorn in 2008, and we all discovered what the word bailout meant in banking terms. Pluto has been in this sign ever since and has brought into question all the institutions on which we have been relying to give structure to our society as a whole. On March 23rd of this year, Pluto took his first step into Aquarius and will be retreading between these 2 signs until he parks firmly in Aquarius from November 24th to March of 2043. Between now and November of next year, humanity will be confronted with the task of cleaning up the dregs of what was left behind while Saturn sat in his ruling signs, with Pluto now wiping the slate clean. It is necessary to retrieve only that which is supportable, while Pluto dismantles everything that no longer serves in all Saturnian themes. Corruption and waste are being exposed. Greed and inequality will be forefront in the collective consciousness. All institutions, including law, finances, education, and medicine, are going to be overhauled and replaced with something more community-oriented and far-reaching in its outlook. The Piscean era was based on a messianic foundation. There is no place for gurus in the age of Aquarius. Look to no one person to save you. Sovereignty is the name of the game now, and it won't come without a fight. Another point to keep in mind is the axis between Leo and Aquarius and what that signifies on a mundane level. As I mentioned in a previous report, we have shifted from a series of Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions in Earth to one of air, and this will repeat for a 200-year cycle. Aquarius is a fixed air sign. Whenever the conjunctions were in fire, like the fixed fire sign of Leo, you had an age of kings and an emphasis on hierarchy. Aquarius is the sign opposite to Leo, so we are about to witness the fall of empires. The last time Pluto was in Aquarius, we had the American and French revolutions. Before that, it was during the Byzantine period in the 6th century. So the next few years won't be a cakewalk by any stretch of the imagination. How best, then, can we navigate the turbulent and potential volatility of this transition of ages? I would point you to a book that offers a clue by its title alone: Hagia Sophia, Sanctum of Kronos, Spiritual Descent in an Age of Tyranny. A link to the book can be found in the show notes below. The author, Peter Mark Adams, is a poet and essayist who turned his focus on sacred landscape, and this most recent publication is an academic opus that blazes a trail towards self-discovery if you read between the lines. In his own words, Peter Mark Adams sums up the book as a journey across the Hellenistic world as its classical culture teeters on the brink of extinction at the hands of religious zealots. The sack of the sanctuary of the mysteries of Eleusis triggered a centuries-long effort to preserve its metaphysical and initiatory traditions for posterity. Tracking this great endeavor, executed in the face of severe persecution, takes us on a journey through the 5th and 6th centuries CE, from the sanctuary of Eleusis to Athens and on to Alexandria, before crossing to Asia Minor and ultimately to Constantinople. En route, we encounter some of humanity's greatest spiritual teachers. In Constantinople, under the nose of the authorities, one of the world's greatest buildings, the Hagia Sophia, was erected based upon astrological timing and embodying a sacred architecture that captured the living essence of the Hellenistic spiritual tradition, a supreme expression of spiritual defiance and dissent in an age of tyranny. Emperor Justinian came to power thanks to his uncle, whose ambition took him from illiterate swineherd to Praetorian Guard. His uncle, an opposing figure at 6'6", murdered and bribed his way up the ranks to reach Constantinople. While in power, Justinian raised taxes to a level that sparked an uprising from the masses in the same way we saw the French peasantry rise against the royals and a newfound America revolted against British colonialism. This uprising in Byzantine era led to 15,000 civilians being butchered at the Hippodrome. Immediately after this bloodbath, work commenced on the construction of Hagia Sophia. According to Adams, the architects were instructed to build a church that exceeded the opulence of the arrogant aristocracy's place of worship, as this was their way of casting doubts on Justinian's entitlement. He was tasked with uniting an empire through military and theological means. This temple was to encompass all four corners of the empire within its walls. The Hellenists were the educated class, and as such, pagan principles, including theurgic ascent and a Platonic afterlife, were symbolically represented in the very materials and construction of this monument that still stands after 1,500 years. No Christian iconography is evident in the original design in the name of inclusivity. At the heart of the building is an intricately executed fusion of gold leaf and glass that gives it a reflective quality coupled with a silvered dome. The master builder was the top expert in optical and acoustical effects of his day. The geometry follows the natural process of creation as laid out in Plato's Timaeus, at the very time Justinian was systematically destroying Hellenistic foundations. Here is an example depicting the summer and winter solstice via symbols of Poseidon, trident and dolphins for summer, and Capricorn the water goat visible in the ripples of the marble for the winter. These are considered gates of the sun where souls enter and exit. This is an encoding of the practice of theurgy, which is the reawakening of one's connection to the divine. Neptune is the guide of souls. As I mentioned earlier, Saturn, Kronos, is now in Neptune's kingdom. You can be sure this represents a changing of the guard and an opportunity to revitalize the mystical that has been subjugated by reductionistic technocratic powers. Am I suggesting we build a secret temple where we can practice our spirituality without fear of torture or retribution? Yes and no. We don't need to construct a place of worship when our spirits are already occupying one that has all the elements represented in concrete terms in the Hagia Sophia. All we have to do is turn inwards and connect with the divinity within. All the tools of ascendancy are built into our anatomy, and we can activate and utilize this magnificent biology to rise above the illusion of materiality and emerge out of Plato's cave intact and born anew. And if you think a machine can replace this cosmic engineering, you will be sadly disappointed. Liberation and self-governance will never be available to you by plugging into AI. It is a tool that should not do our thinking for us. In an effort to do my part in sharing the resurfacing esoteric teachings that ancient groups were systematically exterminated for practicing in the past, I am dedicating the balance of this year in preparing several courses to facilitate your understanding of the theurgic process. As such, I will only be publishing monthly reports on this channel, as there are countless astrologers who will explain in great detail the impact of the transits on your rising signs and how the lunar phases shape your daily life. One channel in particular has my greatest admiration and respect, World Astrology Report. Do look them up and immerse yourself in the incredible synthesis of information that will enrich your lives. I will be merging astrology, alchemy, and theurgy into one cohesive path of emergence, and you are welcome to join me on this adventure in knowing thyself. My first course will be alchemical astrology for beginners, to be followed by mystical Kabbalah for astrologers. Subscribe to my bi-weekly newsletter and join our lunar meditations, the links of which can be found on my website, spiritreading.ca. Launches of the course dates will be announced in the newsletter. You can also subscribe to my podcast, Godbox Cafe, on Spotify and show your support at $4.99 monthly. I look forward to walking by your side and building a community that honors and acknowledges the divine light in each of us.